speaker is Professor Wen from Hong Kong Siam University. He has more than 20 years of teaching experience, and his focus is second language acquisition and cognitive science. He is also an editor of more than 10 books and published many academic papers. Now let's welcome Professor Wen to deliver online speech.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Right. Good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me, right? Yes. Thank you so much for the invitation. I wish to, first of all, apologize for not being there. It seems that you guys have a nice time there, and it's a pity that I cannot join you in person this morning because it's the Easter holiday and crowds everywhere here in Hong Kong to Macau. So I sincerely apologize for that. And I really wish I am there to speak to you in person. I wish to sincerely thank the organizer for inviting me to give this talk. So to share my experience with language learning, in particular, learning many languages. In other words, second or third languages. I understand that Dr. Jie is a multilingual speaker, so perhaps Dr. Jie has more experience than I am in this area, but I wish to share the experience with my research and what people have been doing in this area. So let me share the research first. Screen. Can you all hear clearly? Okay, right. So here is the so I hope that you can all see my screen on the screen, right? So good, thank you. So my topic is from individual differences to personalized language learning and teaching. So just now I listened to Professor Yu's talk, and he's an expert in personalized learning and teaching platforms. Unfortunately, I'm not that have the expertise in technology, but I will focus on the language part and speaking from an applied linguist point of view. So let's see. So hopefully in these 30 minutes, I will be able to cover the individual differences research in second language acquisition, to give the audience a brief overview of what people have been doing in their research and what they have found in terms of the individual differences in second language learning. I will focus on two major ones that I am particularly interested in. One is foreign language aptitude or foreign language learning ability, and the other is working memory that I have focused a lot of my research and organized conferences on this area. But I will touch on intelligence and learning style. And hopefully, if we have enough time, we will touch on personalized language learning and teaching based on individual differences, information from research, a multidimensional framework. But that is waiting to be doing it together with experts like Professor Yu and others in educational technology field. So I will mostly focus on the first part, the individual differences in second language learning and teaching. So if you look at second language, you can have a broad picture. So language teaching, language learning is one of the most complex picture that we can see. It is, first of all, the learner factor, what we call, which has a number of factors. So number one is the age, particularly how do the young children learn a foreign or second language as opposed to adults learning second foreign languages. And then does intelligence play a part? Does language aptitude play a part? And does working memory play a part? What about their personality? If you are an introvert versus you are an extrovert people, person. What does it mean when you're learning a second language? And then what is the motivation to learn the second language, or the identity issue? That these are the individual learner issues that we need to pay attention to. So again, that is the first part that I will focus on. But there are many other things that are affecting the outcome, by the way. So I'm not saying that what I'm talking about is the most important. Yes, it is very important, but it's not the whole story. Please bear in mind with that. So we also have the learner approach, the different learning style, right? The same teacher, the same intelligence can end up very different multilingual speaker, multilingual proficiency. And then there are other features like a good teacher would help, right? The instruction, right? And then what about the opportunities when you're learning English in the US, in the UK versus when you're learning the language in Macau, in Hong Kong, in mainland China? That would be different effect, and the social context as well. So all these will be affecting the second language learning outcome. So that is the broad picture. But unfortunately, as I have researched working memory, I realized that our attention is limited. We can't do too much. We can only focus on very, very small things when we are doing research. So that is something we can look at. So I would like to look at the individual differences in the what we call second language teaching context. So some of them may be considered as fixed, like intelligence, personality, aptitude, or motivation. Others can be malleable or can be changed. Like your learning style may be able to change easier than your intelligence, okay? Your strategies can be easy to teach and to learn it differently, and you can change your strategies or your motivation. So you can see it can be tricky. Sometimes it's fixed, sometimes it is alterable. So it's still debatable issue. Let's look at intelligence. So people are very interested in intelligence, but sometimes teachers hate it because when you are giving them an intelligence text, normally if the IQ is too low, okay, it will be damaging your confidence and your motivation. So normally nowadays we don't use it too often to give you an aptitude or IQ text, right? But anyway, throughout the history in cognitive psychology, intelligence, I have summed it up in this way. So at the very beginning, it was IQ, intelligence quotient, IQ. We know the range is from 0 to 120, 30. One of the most famous example being Albert Einstein, who has got one of the highest standard in IQ text. And then we have EQ, right? And then emotional quotient is also important. But later we have multiple intelligence by Professor Howard Gardner from Harvard University. In other words, you can be good in many different areas. Okay? But one of my favorite person is Robert Sternberger. Okay, Sternberg, who is an expert in who actually was the president of American Association for Psychology, APA. He has come up with this successful intelligence, in which it has 3 levels. So in the past, IQ was only the analytical IQ, analytical ability, but then creative and practical intelligence are also very important. In other words, for example, practical intelligence. When you learn all the things and then you are able to solve problems with what you have learned rather than just analytical and creative in the first place. So that's something that we wish to encourage students at college to have successful intelligence. And later we have Carol Dweck, okay, who published a book in 2006. The title is Mindset, the New Key to Success in Psychology, or that is the book. So in other words, we need to have a growth mindset. I can learn, I can grow, I can pick up new things. rather than a fixed mindset. Oh, that's all. My IQ is like that. I can't do it better. So this is important, and it will have effect on your life and on your language learning. And of course, nowadays we call it adaptive intelligence. In other words, intelligence can be changed. You need to learn and you grow and you will become better. You improve. So that's something we want to know. But in terms of foreign language aptitude, okay, if you are asked, what do you think are the most important qualities for language aptitude? Is there a special talent for language aptitude? The study started in 1950s, 60s. It was very popular in the States, and one of the pioneering figures was J.P. Carroll, John Carroll, and he put forward this 4 factor. So throughout thousands of texts, he come up with this 4-factor model in which he identified four most important abilities in learning a foreign language. Number 1 is phonemic coding ability. In other words, you are able to code or to analyze unfamiliar sound so that it can be retained in your memory. So it's new sound. For example, I'm speaking English, but I'm speaking Cantonese. I'm able to distinguish the sound, right? So even babies have this quality, but this is there is individual differences in this ability. And the second one is grammatical sensitivity, how sensitive you are in terms of grammar. For example, in Cantonese, we say 你行先. In Mandarin, we say 你先走, right? In English, we say you go first. So you are sensitive. You know the difference between Chinese, okay, and then, or even between Cantonese and Mandarin, etc. So this is the sensitivity. And the third one is inductive language learning ability. In other words, you are learning, after you learn some input, you are able to generalize new things. So you are able to generalize. So that is the language ability. And finally, you need to have a good memory. But in those years, it was association between the different forms and the sound. For example, table, right? So you know the sound and the thing. So and the visual, etc. So you are able to form the link. So these are the 4 most important qualities. So I think most of us would agree. So my research area jumped in the 4th one, associative memory. So I think it's not enough because it was in the 50s and 60s. So my only contribution is to make a better understanding of the associative memory. I propose working memory as the language component, language learning ability. So that's something we want you to know. And right, so in the past, we have a number of texts to test it, and one of the most famous one was in 1959 by J.B. Carroll and his colleague Sapon. It was called MLAT, Modern Language Aptitude Text. And then we have the military Pimsleur, and then Canal F. These 2 are classified, so we don't have access to them. And then online one, we have a Paul Miller from the UK who came up with the Llama. And most recent one was the High Proficiency, developed by a group of scholars in Maryland University. Okay. So that is the general view for the language aptitude text. And I have a book coming out this month, actually, language aptitude theory and practice by Cambridge University Press, and it has the detailed introduction to all these major texts that are in use currently in the field. So you can take a look later if you're interested. So modern language aptitude text, for example, was the most famous one. It tests your ability to learn numbers. For example, ba is 1, ba is 2. So these are artificial language. They ask you to see if you still remember the association. Sound symbol letters, okay, and the spelling screws. Garbage, for example, you realize this is the word, and then the word in sentence is texting your grammar sensitivity, whether you are sensitive enough to the grammar functions. and then finally associative matching. Okay, so these are the common types, and you can see that in terms of language aptitude research, okay, actually, so we have seen the different bumpy trip to the language aptitude research. But according to Li Xiaofeng, okay, from Florida State University, AMLET is still the best performer in terms of language aptitude tests. And you can see it has the highest correlation, okay, 0.34, meaning it can explain about quite a large sum of the differences or the variance in predicting your final learning outcome. So at the beginning of the text, we give you this AMLET, and at the end, we give you a text to test your proficiency, and AMLET predicts it quite accurately. So that's something we want to say. But my research area was in language aptitude. I'm thinking working memory can be a more important one. Let's see, what is working memory? It is the cognitive capacity to temporarily store and process information simultaneously in our brain. For example, now I'm talking to you, so you need to remember what I'm talking, and you also need to think about like what I'm talking, okay, and then you think about your response. So these two functions, storage and processing. And unfortunately, our working memory is very limited in capacity in terms of the span. That most of you have heard of the magical number 7 plus minus 2. In other words, if they are unrelated, you can only remember about 5 to 9 digits or different chunks, right? Nelson Calvin from the US has come up with a more realistic number, 4 plus minus 1 for working memory, actually. So 7 plus minus 2 is for short-term memory, while for working memory is even more limited. It's only 4 plus minus 1, between 3 to 5. And that has been suggested by many empirical studies. And in terms of duration, we have the left ear in, right ear out, right? So it lasts information, if it's not processed, it only stays in our brain for about 20 seconds. Okay, some of them are gone, some of them enter our long-term memory, etc. So in this case, long-term memory plays a very important role. It is like the gateway to working memory is like the gateway to long-term memory, just like Hong Kong to China in the past, right? You have to go through, or like Macau to China in the past. So it is a gateway. So in recent years, people have been arguing that working memory is the new intelligence for learning because it predicts better than IQ text. And I have argued it as a language aptitude because in learning a language, we need to rely on working memory, storage function, and the processing function. And I can even say this is the underlying mechanism for language learning and processing. So that's something I have been doing in the past 20 years, but one of the most famous scholar is Professor Alan Baddeley from Cambridge, and they proposed this working memory model, the most classical model of working memory in 1974, and we celebrated it in 50th anniversary. I just have a recent book coming out from Oxford University, Working Memory in Science for Society, which was dedicated to Professor Alan Baddeley for his famous and well-influential model in working memory. In this model, we call it the multi-component model. Working memory has different components. One is the visual spatial sketch pad, and then the other is the phonological loop, and the third one is central executive, which are coordinating our attention. So that's something we have been looking at, the different relationships between these different components and their effects on language learning as a whole. And of course, if you look at the empirical studies, empirical evidence is not too high, 0.255, but I think that the text itself needs to be improved. But again, we have some model for this. And And we have a lot of, for example, working memory. I have called it the language learning device, because if you look at different languages, if you put down the head word, the most important word, particularly usually the verb in the sentence, before it and after it, there are no more than 7 units. Otherwise, you have no friends. Okay. So that is the underlying mechanism of language, which is what I call the new language acquisition device. That is something we argue in. So language learning style, we know different people have different styles, and that may be able to affect. And then language anxiety, also we have talked about the ideal stress, etc. So this is something that the field has looked at. Personality, we know that there are 5 different types, broad different types of person: extroversion and introversion, inhibition and risk-taking, anxiety, self-esteem, empathy, and they seem to have some effects, but not too obvious compared with the 3 ones that I have talked about. So they are less interesting in terms of predicting language. What about some problems? If we have looked at it, if we look at the individual differences, okay, we know that there are some problems with them, and we still need to move on. But in terms of e-learning or online learning, there are a lot of, now that we have found the individual differences in learners, but we haven't done anything in the classroom. And it's difficult because when we are facing 20 students with different individual differences, it's difficult. And when we are facing 200, not to mention, right? So this is impossible. But nowadays with e-learning, just now you listened to Professor Yu's talk, right? It's possible, individualized learning. So that's why I am thinking this is the time for us to combine individual differences in second language versus individual differences or personalized learning in e-learning, online learning, etc. So this is the time for us to collaborate to talk about this one. So that is the way that we are moving forward. And I think because of the time limit, I will just talk about the future directions exactly. So in my recent books, I have argued, try to what we call for a interdisciplinary research agenda, so that we can combine different sources, different disciplines, different scholars from multidisciplinary fields. For example, cognitive science perspective, we have applied linguistics, psychology, education, neuroscience, anthropology, philosophy, and computer science, etc., so that we can combine efforts or concert efforts together to get a better idea of how a second or foreign language can be learned better. And I have come up with this what we call integrated model, so that we have an integrated theory of language aptitude. So I just finished writing a proposal for a review paper on language aptitude, the science of language aptitude. Hopefully, I'm going to submit it to science to see if they are interested or not. So I will keep my fingers crossed to see if they agree with these multidisciplinary efforts on language aptitude. It starts from the texting in the past, and then it is now in the theoretical construction, and in the future, it will be pedagogy, or what we call practical application stage. So the future lies in the 3rd stage, what we call the pedagogical execution or personalized learning stage. So that is the grand overview of individual differences to personalized learning. But in personalized learning, we have experts here. Professor Yu can talk more about it. But currently in our field, Professor Patrick Wong from CHK, who I invited him to give a talk to my previous symposium. Okay, and he believes that the time is ripe for personalized learning. And the goal of personalized learning is not to find predictors like what we have done in second language to identify the good learners, okay, but rather it is to consider what is being learned and how learning occurs in online platforms, etc. So the authors argue that finding predictors of individual differences under a particular learning paradigm and to combine them with careful consideration of the aspects and stage of learning they have and have not yet been reached is the very key to success to personalized learning. So I think I won't go into too much detail because we haven't done much on that. But basically, the personalized learning from our perspective is something that we can collaborate in the future. So this we did give four criteria to personalize individual differences, and I want to go straightforward to the end. So we did a bibliometric analysis of digital technology in personalized learning and found three major areas come out. Okay, so one is 4 major AI-based learning, and then we have the automatic writing system, and then tele-collaborative and gamification. So these are all technical areas that Professor Yu can have better guidance for us. So these are the 4 general principles. Okay, the first one is we rely on individual differences research from a second language, and then we look at the next one is the expectations and outcomes that we need to consider, and the next one is the context of the learning or the conditions of learning, and finally we need to think about the research and the resources, what we call the affordances, right? And finally, we come up with the assessment measure. So these are the 4 dimensions of the personalized learning system that we are thinking of. So with that, I come to the last slide. So from individual differences to personalized learning, final remarks. So given the extensive research on individual differences in SLA, perhaps it is time to think about personalized learning, so PLL. And of course, our ultimate goal is to achieve ultimate learning for each learner. Effective teaching can improve a combination of, number one, the same classroom learning, still the same. We can't do too much in personalized, okay? It's group-based. But then when it comes to individual, we can come up with some solutions for smaller tutorial sections for subgroups of learners with different learning needs. So that's what we mean by individual differences. And then finally, an adaptive e-learning platform for personalized additional learning and practice and review so that we include everybody. Nobody is left behind in our teaching. So social justice is achieved. Equality is achieved in education. So because of time limit, I will stop here. And these are the books that I published with our team in different publishers. And you are more than welcome to keep in touch and to join us in developing the next generation of personalized language learning system or platform. So I wish to thank you all again for your attention, and let's stay in touch. Thank you. That's the end of my